everybody. This is Allie Orwig with the Indiana Rural Health Association. We appreciate you joining us today. Just a couple quick housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording today's session and it will be up at the latest early next week. If you're not able to join us for the whole time, or if you just really love the presentation and want to share it with a colleague, we will have that on our YouTube channel. Also, we will be taking questions throughout today's session. You can use either the Q&A or chat functions. If you hover your mouse over the screen, depending on which view mode you're in, those will pop down from the top or up from the bottom, and you can submit your questions that way. If you do prefer to ask your question verbally, please hold that till the end and then use the raise hand function, very similar to where you find the chat and QA. And we will be able to unmute your line and allow you to answer or to ask your question verbally. So I think that is everything I had. And without further ado, Todd, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much. Just want to say thank you, Allie, and thank you, Carolyn. This conversation really began. I attend the IRHA conference, which is fantastic, as you all know, and just had an opportunity. We're doing some tabling down there, and this conversation kind of generated from there, and then the opportunity to present today. So just want to say thank you once again to IRHA, because I think this is just a phenomenal opportunity for us as part of CAV to talk about our program. And so with that, I'm Todd Burkhardt. I work for Indiana University. I've been with the University Bloomington campus for about 7 years. Not originally from Indiana, but moved here about 7 years or so. And during that time, taught ROTC at Indiana University. I also now work for the Center for Rural Engagement. I'm the Director of Campus Partnerships. I'm also an adjunct senior lecturer in the Department of Criminal Justice. I teach the ethics and law of war. And so really, I served in the military almost 3 decades, about 28 years of active duty service. I was an enlisted soldier, went back to college, became an Army officer, and then served 25 years as an Army officer and 3 years prior to that as an enlisted soldier. And so thoroughly enjoyed my time in the military, but transitioned out in 2019 and retired and look forward to civilian life. And I have to say it was although I was fortunate, I stayed at Indiana University and began working for the Center for Rural Engagement. I taught ROTC there previously as my last active duty military job. But transition was really difficult for me. It was hard, right? I worked with amazing faculty and staff, and incredibly friendly and cordial and thoughtful. But I just never felt like I fit in, and I felt alienated in a lot of ways. And I became depressed, and for good or bad, a lot of my self-worth was really tied to my military profession and the things that I had accomplished during 30 years of service. And so that was all gone, right? And it was starting, in a sense, anew. And it was challenging. Around the same time, a friend of mine who's an art therapist who works at the Eskenazi Museum of Art on Bloomington's campus, I worked with her in other rural programming. And she said, "Hey, why don't you come over for an open studio? You and the rest of the center." I work with a team of about 14 or so folks, and take you through various different prompts. We'll use different art mediums. It'll be fun. And I was like, okay, I'm not artistic, and I haven't used art since high school. And I was like, yeah, sure. And so there was something about it, right? There was this mindfulness, this intentionality, this ability to express through nonverbal means. And I think it was incredibly impactful to me. I'm part of a stoic profession, the military, of, suck it up and drive on, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's okay sometimes in the military based on the gravity of the situation. However, it permeates all aspects of military culture, and it can be incredibly problematic and fatalistic by just not expressing any mental health concerns and just sucking it up and driving on. And so there was this mindfulness and expression of using art in this open studio that we did for about 2 hours. And I, pun intended, I felt I was drawn to it. And I said something to Lauren after that maybe I found it to be beneficial and therapeutic, and that maybe if it could help me, right, as a veteran who's transitioning and overcoming other obstacles or invisible wounds, maybe it could help other veterans as well. And so that was about 3 years ago. And Lauren and I co-created CAV, Creative Arts for Veterans. And so I want to talk to you today about CAV, but also the CAV book. Um, and so, what is CAV? Well, Creative Arts for Vets aims to support veterans, service members, those currently serving, and military connected populations, spouses, adult family members of those who have served through arts and art based approaches that promote connectedness and improve mental health and well being. And so, what does that look like? So, for the last 3 years, we've gone around the state and we have hosted and facilitated art based wellness programming. And I can talk a little bit more in depth about different things that we do, but predominantly what we have used is mask making or needle felting and also mandalas as the art-based wellness exercise. We've also tied art with horses and worked with multiple equine assisted stables that provide that are trained horses that provide equine assisted activities. And also we have Tai Chi and yoga instructors, and our yoga instructor is also a trauma therapist. And so there's a lot of evidence-based research to show that using art-based wellness, right, can reduce symptoms based on a host of different things you can see on my slide, from isolation to depression to anxiety to transition, to substance use to suicidal ideation, or military sexual trauma. And my population, the military, we have the highest rate of suicide nationally. Anywhere from 17 to 22 a day of U.S. military veterans die by suicide nationally, right? So it's absolutely staggering the number of suicides that the military or veterans has taken place. And I have to say, you look at the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan over the last 20 years, and there is, I think, 8,000 soldiers or so that have been killed in those two wars. 3 times as many have died by suicide in the last 20 years. So it is a major problem among veterans, and there's all different types of organizations, of course, trying to work to alleviate and reduce that. But art, I think, is one way, as evidence shows, that can be incredibly beneficial to improving one's mental health and well-being. In addition to that, art has shown to be able to improve communication and interpersonal relations. And in addition to that, also provide, identify, show, right, ways that people can develop coping strategies or mechanisms to deal with life's challenges. And so, as I mentioned, we have gone around the state. We are free, funded through Indiana University, and facilitate art-based wellness events and programming. And one of the things that had come up multiple times in multiple counties with multiple veterans groups is like, hey, this was amazing. This is awesome. When are you coming back? And, I'd love to come back the next day or the next week, but, have a day job, and, they're busy with their lives, and we might have another event coming up in a couple weeks or whatever the case is. And so inevitably, would come back, but it might take 3 or 4 months to put something else on the books. And we all know that trying to do something that can benefit you regarding your mental health and well-being, you have to do more than once every quarter or once every 4 months. It's just not going to be enough. And so it got me thinking that I wonder if there's a way that we could package what we do in a take-home version. And so the team, I work with an amazing team. This is a chunk of the team, but this is not the whole team. But what I did is we sat down, this team, and developed the CAV book, which we saw as a take-home version, which is a therapeutic guidebook that was best informed by art therapy, art-based wellness, social work best practices, has veteran narratives, veteran resources. As a way, and there's a picture of sort of, we were doing an assembly line of building the art kits, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, that accompanies the book itself. And so we sat in about 7 months and worked on this book last summer through December, and then went through some revisions and some updates, right? And then finally it was published in March of 2023. So the book has been out now for 4 months. And you can just see, here's the folks I worked with, amazing group. And I would say one of the great things about this, my background, I'm a philosopher, I'm a human rights philosopher, so that's my academic background. This is interdisciplinary, interprofessional, right? Art therapist, social work faculty, philosopher, right? Coming together, and then having, two interns that assisted us, one with art therapy, working on art therapy degree, and another working on their master's in social work. And then of course our media specialist, who's a graphic designer, who set up the whole book for us. And so the CAV book. Uh, so as I mentioned, right, a therapeutic guidebook, and it's a way to expose and enhance resiliency using art-based wellness experiences. Uh, Me, for one, right, have never really experienced the benefits of the arts. I hadn't touched art since I was 17 years of age, so to speak. And so it has been incredibly beneficial to me in the last 3 years as a way to express, and just deal with things of loss of through the military. I'm a combat veteran, spent time in Afghanistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And, bad things happen. And so art is a great way, I think, to express where maybe sometimes, I like to throw weights around in my backyard, but sometimes that doesn't get to it. And I needed more. And in addition to having art exercises and journaling information and veteran resources, and there's veteran narratives in this book, we also provide psychoeducational information in the book as a way to educate and inform those out there about learning about the importance of mental health and well-being, as in identifying different things out there that maybe somebody is actually going through, and that they're not the only one. And so we do spend a lot of time in the book talking about suicide, suicidal ideation, grief and loss, survivor's guilt, moral injury, but also ways to develop post-traumatic growth and develop resiliency. Another thing about the book, and I have to say, we have funding for this book through Indiana University Center for Rural Engagement and also Indiana Department of Health. And Indiana Department of Health was really interested in this book because it increases access to mental health resources, right? We all know there's a lot of places in Indiana and across the country that there are mental health provider deserts. Or if there are mental health providers, the ratio of people to that provider is astronomically high. And then does somebody have the insurance, or is somebody underinsured, or whatever the case may be? And the CAV book, of course, the CAV book does not replace a mental health professional, and we're never saying that. But this book can provide avenues and develop resiliency and understanding and ways to express, which can benefit mental health and social well-being. And so incredibly important, increasing access. And so we can get this book out to anybody across the United States, right? Just need a mailing address and we'll mail it to you. And the great thing about the CAV book is, hey, we want you to come to our in-person events, but you don't have to. Transportation issues or whatever the case may be, or maybe you don't feel comfortable coming to an event, coloring and talk about mental well-being. You can use this in the safety and the comfort and security of your home, on your front porch, on your lazy boy, or if you're traveling, or if you're hospitalized. And also we have provided CAV books to some folks veterans that are in shelters and also that are incarcerated. Indiana has about 1,600 veterans that are incarcerated. And so need outlets just like everybody else in order to express and develop strategies to defend themselves regarding obstacles and challenges regarding mental health and well-being. In addition to the book, each book comes with an art kit because we didn't want to send out a book without art supplies. We didn't want somebody to have to find a Bic pen or grab their kids' crayons or whatever the case may be. When I was with Lauren during the open studio, what I thought was impactful was we used a bunch of different mediums. And some I was like, I don't really care about it. But I was really drawn to oil pastels. I've never used them in my life. And there was something about the ability to smear and smudge and get them on my hands that I really loved. And so we want that same opportunity for anybody who opens a CAV book. And so what we send is a bunch of different art supplies that include watercolor pencils that you can use with or without water, a paintbrush, charcoal pencils, hard and soft, pencil sharpener, and also oil pastels. And in addition to that, we provide instructions on how to use those uh, art mediums, because you might not have ever used them and not sure exactly what to do with them, and maybe be standoffish towards them. And we don't want that. We want people to engage with all of them, find maybe what could be useful or meaningful to you. Yeah. And then lastly, fortunately, because of funding, and I'm always looking for more funding because the funding we have goes fast. As I mentioned, we do have funding through Indiana University and also IDOH. But CAV Books is a way to increase access, right? They're free. So they're free to veterans. They are free to spouses of veterans. They are free to those currently serving in our military, and these are free to service providers who work with veterans. So if you're a service provider and you work with veterans, we will mail you 15 for free. So and on it, that a group of 15 with art supplies, and it's very thick paper for drawing and art making. That's a box we'll send you. It's $500. And that's more or less what it costs us for interns, packing materials, shipping costs. Art supplies are expensive, and then the book itself is specially printed and published using thick 120-pound test paper. But that's what we do because we want to increase access. And so here are some pictures of the CAV book, and I'll show one in a second. You can kind of visual or see it. And the way we set this up, and I have to say, of course, there are so many people that have been exposed to trauma or secondhand trauma more than people who have served in the military, or some civilians much more than the military. There is no doubt. However, this book is geared towards the military. I'm part of that profession. I speak veteran. It just was easy for me and our team to kind of work around and focus on a particular group. So there is no doubt this could be beneficial to other groups as well. But the way it's designed and written, it's written in military-like language and the vernacular and pictures, and you can see some of the images on there. It's designed to, there's a level of hopefully comfortableness with the military population. One of our students made this little cool pop-up showing the CAV book. Yeah, just to kind of give you a visualization of the book itself. Whoops. And there's just a photo, and I talked about the different various mediums. You can see there's an instruction card. It says art supply instructions and explains how to use each of the art type mediums. Underneath that instruction card is oil pastels. And then on top of it is a hard and soft charcoal paintbrush, and then watercolor pencils, pencil sharpener, and then underneath there's a sticker or CAV logo. And so if you might be interested, right, in ordering CAV books, right, maybe somebody in your family has served or a neighbor of yours has served, please feel free to share this information. Or you're a service provider. You're a librarian and work in a rural library or a urban or suburban library. You're a social worker. You work in police department or fire and paramedicine unit. You're a social worker. You're a nonprofit who works with veterans. You are in a hospital. You're a counselor, a therapist, whatever the case may be. We send these out to all different types of service providers. And so all you have to do is go to our website, which is go.iu.edu/IUCAV. And then you scroll down on our website here. This is a screenshot of our website. Talks a little bit about the CAV book. And then if you look on the right-hand side, I have a red arrow. It says, you get your free copy. You click there. We'll send them and mail them anywhere free of cost. And of course, as you click on there as a service provider and ask how many you'd like, and you can receive 15 up to 15 free. let's say your organization is interested in more than that, you can purchase additional copies. And I have to say, they're about $35 a piece, but depending on the size of your organization, if there is not a way to pay that extent, but you want so many books, we can always work with you, right? Because at the end of the day, our goal is to get out these to in the hands of veterans. And I would rather get these out than have them in a box somewhere and they don't go anywhere. So I'd be happy to figure out whatever that is. If you look to the bottom left, we mail anywhere in the United States, and we also mail to APO. APO is used for soldiers that are currently deployed, whether that's in Europe or in Asia or wherever the case may be. And our books are currently being implemented in Iraq and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia by mental health units for U.S. military soldiers that are currently deployed there. And so here's some stats, right? And so, the book's been out for about 4 years. And so, excuse me, not 4 years. I've been out for about 4 months. It came out in March 2023. And we've shipped just over 3,000 CAV books, right, to veterans and service providers who work with veterans in at least 35 different states. You can see the types of providers that we have sent them to, from VA clinics to hospitals to university and college veteran centers services to hospice care to palliative care, transitional services, nursing homes, equine assisted psychotherapy, parks and rec, public libraries, you name it, right? Correctional facilities. We have sent these out to all different types of organizations, veteran treatment courts, and others, right, that work with veterans. And so I think that's really the main reason for this presentation today is if you work with veterans or your partner or our organizations that work with veterans, this could possibly be a part of your program. And for Indiana stats, currently, regarding veterans, we've sent them to veterans in 39 counties. You can see the list of counties in Indiana. And we have sent these CAV books to 37 counties regarding service providers, right? You can see the list of counties there as well. And so you might say, hey, okay, so how are these books being implemented? There's all different ways. Some of the anecdotes, we receive emails, anecdotes, and other feedback from people who have been using the CAV book in one way or another. And it seems to be with a lot of healthcare providers that they use this to somehow augment their already robust programming. I've heard from a couple different healthcare providers where this is a way to keep their client's mind engaged instead of maybe just sitting at home and doing nothing, or sitting and worrying or stressing, or maybe it's hard for one to sleep. And it's a way to keep the mind engaged, right? And work through coping strategies using art and using the benefit of art to express and create. And sometimes, as I mentioned about being from a stoic profession of like, one should be uncomfortable or get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's problematic, right? And in the military, we find other ways to deal with that overwhelming stress, from drinking excessively. Military culture is all about drinking and supporting that. I don't know if you've ever been to a military post or base, but the amount of alcohol you can buy and cheap is absolutely amazing. And so it just seems to be military culture is like, just drink it off. That's fatalistic and it's problematic, right? And we need to find better ways to deal with and improve mental health and well-being. And so the CAV book is maybe just one ingredient in the whole recipe, right? Whatever that may be. We all know you need to have social relationships and have relationships with others. Find some type of meaningful engagements, whether in work or some in work, but also in hobbies. Get enough sleep, eat right, exercise right. We all understand that this is multifaceted and incredibly important. And I think art is one other ingredient in that recipe, right? Or one other tool in the tool book or in the toolbox or toolkit, right, in order to help and improve. Um, Also, you know, and also on this, I have, people are like, well, I've never done this before, and I'm not really sure what to do. I get a book. What am I supposed to do with it? You just have to open it, right? And so, as a veteran, somebody gets this book. Hopefully, it's not daunting. We set it up in that it's based on chapters, right? And there's no experience necessary. Like I said, we provide instructions throughout the whole book of what we'd like you to do. And there's even instructions on how to use the art materials. And it can be somewhat daunting if, like, you're like, oh yeah, I've heard all this great stuff about using art. Okay, I'll go to, the dollar store, I'll go to Staples and I'll buy some art supplies and I'll buy some paper and then I'll just start doing stuff. That can be overwhelming, right? Like, what do I buy? How do I get started? What do I draw? Well, the cool thing about the CAV book is we've already thought through all that stuff, and we provide information, we provide prompts, we provide detail, we provide exercises, so it's all there, right? And it's conjoined, right, with the art supplies themselves. And when I'm talking about the chapters, the way we set it up is, there's 5 chapters. One is predicated on the next. And we start with, kind of some of these vernacular terminology kind of makes sense to people who have spent some time in the military. We're going to start with basic training, right? Start at the beginning, build some foundation, then work through self-discovery, then try to overcome some challenges, and then drive on, right? Continue on. And then, the last chapter is the sky, as the sky is the limit, right? Is we can go as far as we want to go. And so another thing about the CAV book that I'll just mention is we have made it, I think, here, I'll hold one up. We've made it portable, right? So it comes in a heavy duty Ziploc bag. It's easy, right? Just everything's together. You can take it on the road, pack it into your suitcase, whatever the case may be, keep it under your chair or, on a book stand or wherever, or nightstand in your house. It's really easy to carry and keep together and then, and use. And in addition to service providers using the book, I've heard from quite a few veterans as well, right? And so some of the veterans that have written me and have talked to me have said this is a kind of a unique opportunity for them to talk about things that they really didn't know how to broach. You're going to meet your buddy for coffee. You meet your buddy that you served with once a month for coffee to catch up. Most likely, when you sit down, you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" No one's going to say, "Hey, let's talk about moral injury. Let's talk about survivor's guilt." I mean, it's kind of hard to bring up those things that actually veterans might have been exposed to, experienced, maybe they have secondhand or firsthand trauma regarding those things. And so it was really great. And I really always appreciate feedback on the book. And, this veteran wrote me, is like, this gave me a way to talk about topics that I never would have been able to bring up with my buddies. And because it's not him bringing it up, it's the book, right? So it's like, hey, what about that book, right? That they both have a copy of. And he's like, hey, let's talk about that moral injury thing. What did you read it? What were your thoughts on that, right? And they're able to talk about something because they both have a shared understanding and both had served, and there's a comfortableness. And the book enables them to use it as the jump off point into getting into a conversation that probably needed to be had. And so I think just in a lot of ways, the book provides access and exposes people to the benefit of the arts. And the last thing I'll just mention real quick, I'm holding a copy of the book. What we also have done on the back end of the book is we try to connect a bunch of different resources, national resources that veterans might be interested in. Also, there's a bunch of different apps that you can download on your phone that maybe people aren't aware of, right? And these are mindfulness coach or live whole health or insomnia coach or PTSD or military sexual trauma, beyond military sexual trauma. That can be incredibly beneficial for somebody that might not know these apps exist, and they're free. They are facilitated through the VA. In addition to that, we always want to connect people to their entitlements and their benefits. And so if you're not already connected with the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs, we have a QR code right here. You take a picture of it. It shows the 92 counties. You click on whatever county you're in or live in, and then that puts you it gives you the email and the phone number information to your veteran service officer who is responsible for all the veterans in that county to ensure that those people have their entitlements, their benefits and entitlements. And the last thing that we included in this book is we've worked with the Indiana Arts Commission on is we have, see if I can find it. Yeah, there's the Indiana Arts Commission logo. But what we have 3 or 4 pages by county of all the various different art organizations that maybe a veteran who lives in a particular county is interested in getting more engaged with art, right? Well, where does he or she reach out to? So, for example, let's say you're in Morgan County. Well, you can reach out to the Porcelain Art School of Indiana, the Martinsville Arts Council, right? R2, right there, we have them listed by the 92 counties that maybe somebody wants to get more involved. So we try to put them in contact with organizations that work with art in their county. And so I think with that, I think that kind of wraps up some of the key things that I wanted to talk to you today about regarding creative arts for veterans, and in particular the CAV book. There's my email address. I'm always happy to entertain any type of questions or present or whatever the case may be. And also there's our website. It talks about it shows, if anybody's interested in putting together or having us come to their county to facilitate art-based wellness event, you can go to our website and submit a request. Also, that's where you submit a request for CAV books, and you can also scroll down the website towards the bottom, and you can see everybody who is part of the CAV team. And so, with that, I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, Ali and IRHA, for the opportunity to talk today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Todd. What a unique and wonderful program, and available to essentially anybody.
Yeah.
Those resources out there. So I haven't seen any questions come in yet. I will go ahead and keep the line open for just a few more minutes if anybody wants to type a question. Again, if you'd like to raise your hand and ask your question verbally, you can also do that. Hover your mouse at the top or bottom of the screen, and some options will pop up for you. But other than that, we just very much appreciate everyone's time today. Todd, you for presenting, and those for attending and learning about this wonderful program.
Great. Thank you so much.